Hi and welcome everyone to another lesson. In today's lesson, I'm going to be walking you through the steps to paint this beautiful orange and purple pansy. And I'm using just regular oil paint today. So I hope that you'll enjoy this lesson and be able to follow along. And I also paint in acrylic and water-based oil, and I use the same colors so that you can follow along. So I hope that that helps. So if you're painting and you go, oh, I can't do this video because it's in oil, don't worry. I do the same kind of technique in acrylic. It's just that oil is much more forgiving when it comes to the blending element of the video. It's just a little bit, you have just more drying time. But other than that, I enjoy both mediums, and I have lessons on my Patreon channel that have both. So pansies and acrylic as well. So anyhow, I'm going to get started with a little wash just to get rid of the white. I'm going to use a little of this ultramarine blue and this transparent brown oxide. Oh, and up here, you can't see it, but I have just some white and some cad yellow light up here. If I have my palette too far down, it will get all over, I'll be dragging my hand through this. So, as you can see, it kind of gives a gray wash to this little gesso board that I'm using. And these gesso boards are great for little studies. And if you sell your paintings online, they're really easy to ship because they don't take up a lot of space. So I just like to get that nice kind of neutral tone to my surface. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to really focus in on just painting this pansy and keep it simple. So I could even wipe out where I'm going to put the main part of this pansy, like all the petals, if I want to keep that yellow really clean underneath. So just kind of basic, where it's gonna be. And then the other pansies in the background are just gonna be kind of more, like abstract shape in my composition. As you can see, I can't really paint and talk today. I like to keep talking though, so you're not just sitting there falling asleep while I paint. But also so that you get as much out of the video as you can. All right, so I kind of wiped out where some of the shapes are gonna go, all the different pansy shapes. But I want to block in now using some of this Indian yellow and I'm just using regular odorless mineral spirits. Boy, that's a mouthful today. So I'm just going to get a little bit of that Indian yellow, and I want to block in kind of where that pansy is going here. And I kind of like how it's on a bit of an angle, so I want to make sure that I capture that in my drawing. And when I say drawing, I mean painting. For me, it's much easier to block in these shapes than it is to draw everything out. I'm just going to block in a bit of some of those yellow abstract patterns in the background there. And they kind of go up and off the canvas. And the beauty is Indian yellow. Down here I've got out a little blob of dioxazine violet, and this is permanent rose. Let's see if I can just add that in there. just so you have that. And those are just, I mainly use Winsor and Newton paint, but sometimes I'll use Blick, you know, or Utrecht brand. Okay, so just kind of blocking in. I'm going to use a little bit of this transparent brown oxide and just sort of want to put that center in, and so I can see exactly what I'm doing there. Then I'm going to get a little bit of this dioxazine violet. And I'm really trying to keep this painting loose. So I'm not going to be making these, you know, pansies hyper realistic, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to block in where there's like a real dark shadow on the flower. Also the shape of the pansy petal too. They kind of go up like little butterfly. They remind me of like kind of butterfly wings. They're so delicate. And then to get that sort of transparent purple, I'm going to use a little bit of that permanent rose in there. And I'm going to show you a trick that I use to get that sort of transparent look. And while I'm at it, I'm going to put in, just like I said, sort of we're creating sort of patterns of purples, and I'm looking at the background at some shapes. I'm really not trying to make anything here even remotely look like a pansy when I'm doing these background, just sort of the shapes I'm seeing. These are going to be really just sort of in the background. And sometimes you'll be surprised, the less you try, the better your flowers look. Sometimes I'll work so hard and they look better when I just do them real spontaneously like this. I'm adding a little bit of cobalt blue to these ones that are down here. They're in a little bit of more of a shadow. And so while I'm blocking in, I'm going to just use a little bit of this Viridian green and some brown oxide, transparent brown oxide here. And I'm going to now just sort of block in some of the green in between those marks. This is going to look really this painting is going to be very loose. I'll use a little Indian yellow and some of that Viridian green. Just get a little bit more of, when you mix Indian yellow with the Viridian or sap, you kind of get a nice green gold color, so you don't have to go and buy another tube of paint. You can, if you want it to look even more gold, just add more of the transparent, the Indian yellow. You'll get that transparent green gold kind of color. And you'll see what I'm going to do next. I'm just putting these marks in, and that's why I like to start with sort of that neutral wash in the background, just so as you get more and more committed in your painting, it just gives it that nice, like, any light that's shining through, it's not white at least, you know what I mean? You don't want to have that. That would be a lot of work to try to fix. So I'm just going to take one of these soft Viva paper towels. I'll just rip a little piece off. And what you can do is, I like to sort of like, I'll lift off some of this paint here where I know I want that to kind of glow a bit. And you can see, let me just zoom in, when you lift it off, it gets that sort of glow to it. The more you lift off, of course, the more you get back to that original white canvas. So I'm going to do that, and I like to now, you see all these little kind of specks coming through. This is where you can kind of really make some neat marks, is just using your paper towel to sort of fill in, and just keep folding it so you get a clean spot again. And you can just see how pretty these brush strokes look. Let me just show you up close. So this one here, it sort of makes your job a little easier. And it keeps it loose, so you're getting so many of these really loose marks everywhere. I really have fun with that. And then the background really takes on a background, because this will be your main focal point flower, but you're really going to see this softens all those marks together, forming sort of a tapestry. And this is what people really enjoy, is the loose brush strokes. So it takes a little practice. Just when you're doing it, notice that I'm not covering over, I'm not bringing it right through. When I'm wiping off, I'm very careful about bringing too much over the yellows. I'll get a clean bit of paper towel, and you can bring some of that yellow back over some of these like that, but you don't want to go through it too much with the greens. And if you get too much on your paper towel, just go make sure to get another piece and go again. So now you can see I've got kind of the grounds for everything is there, and then I can decide later what color I want to do the sky, if at all. Sometimes I like the kind of raw background. Alright, so now I'm going to go back to my main flower here and really focus on some of the details. So if you squint down and look at the flower itself, this bottom petal is a little darker. So I'm going to get, let's see what I'm going to use here. I think some of this transparent red oxide, and I could try a little bit of this orange and some of this cad yellow light, and sort of get some of the darker side of this flower in there. And then a little bit of yellow ochre for the shadow up here. And my brush strokes are going with the flower. So just like the flower goes up and out like that, I try to drag the paint that way. And then you can also go back inwards as well like that. But the main thing I kind of try to do is mimic the way the flower has its kind of veins and everything. So it kind of comes in and goes down like this. And this kind of curves out a little bit more. So it's this petal is curling over. And another tip, sometimes if the flower's too, in the photo that you really like is just too complex, the way it's formed, you could always just simplify this to two petals that are the same as this one. So you could just do two simple, round ones like that. And that's sometimes a good idea if it's a little bit too complicated. I can show you that, what I would do. So I'm just kind of showing you right there how that's going. Whoops, I got green on my brush. So if you do that and you get some green, or you don't want it, don't worry, because you can use a dry brush and sort of scrape it, or you can just use a paper towel like that and wipe it out. And I'm going to lift off some of this paint here, just to create that light coming through. Just sort of lift off where I want it to be really bright again. So you can see how pretty that looks too when you lift off the paint. You really get a nice kind of glow to the painting. And I like to get the center in there, work on the little, it's kind of like a face, so I'll work on that. So I'm going to mix some orange with this transparent oxide, red oxide, and a bit of this permanent rose to get a nice warm shadow on this side of the flower here where it kind of curls in. And you always have to look like, what is this? Is it in front of these two or behind? In this case, it's in front. And sometimes I'd paint the whole thing and not really pay attention to those details. And then later I'd go, that was really obvious. And then have to kind of redo some of it. Just mixed a little. This is the shadow side, and then I'm mixing a little bit of orange and yellow ochre into that other side. I haven't used any white yet, and eventually I probably will, to make these colors really stand out a bit more. So I'm gonna now I'll add a little bit of white to this mixture and a little more yellow for this kind of peachy, kind of orange color here. And then I can blend a bit there. And get a little red oxide, and then I'm going to put a little shadow in first, where just before those little white, where the little kind of beards are in the inside there. I'm just going to get a little bit of that shadow in first before I put the white, so that it doesn't really get messed up with all the white. So I kind of drag that out like this on each side. Let's get a little more that brighter yellow back in there. And put in some of that brighter yellow edge there. And once, you'll notice I put those brush strokes in that way, and you're probably like, well, what happened to your, curling with the, going with the flow? But sometimes you have to do that to get the color on there a little thicker. And I'll pull some of those brush strokes to kind of blend it a bit. You just kind of have to do what you got to do to get the job done sometimes. And sometimes I like leaving those strokes like that. You'll kind of, as you get more and more your own style, you'll kind of leave certain things, and that's what kind of makes it unique for you. Gonna add a little yellow ochre, orange, and a little bit of this white, and you can add a little bit of highlight to the edge of this bottom flower. And now I can get to some of I kind of jumped the gun a little on doing the fun stuff, but I want you to be inspired to keep watching. So I'm gonna put in a little bit of the little beard in the center. So I'll get some white, and I'm gonna mix it in with a little dab of yellow ochre. And just sort of pop that in the center. I'm trying to keep it real simple. You know, I don't want to get too fussy with the details. And then we're gonna go and I want to put a little hit of bright orange right there where I see it, without losing my shadow. I'm going to blend it a bit. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit of that darker yellowy orangey mix in here. And now I'm going to keep going. I won't add those little lines yet. I'm going to add some, I want to exaggerate, even though in the photo you can't see that it's too bright. I'm going to add a tiny bit of white, and I'm going to see what this, and some of that. So permanent rose and dioxazine violet to make that sort of magenta color. And I'm going to put in some of that highlight and have fun with the color, because it's a little, of course, exaggerated a bit from the photo, but I kind of wanted to do that, so just for fun. Take a little bit of that permanent rose and some white, and I'm gonna just tap the sides a bit to add a little highlight there to the edge that's in the sunlight. And so you can start to see that one is becoming the highlight of the painting. You can always go back in and add some shadow. If you took out too much, just get a little bit of that dioxazine and pop it back in. And the center of this little flower is green, so you can go in and take a bit of that green that you were mixing in earlier and just pop a little green in there. And then So I'm gonna wait to get finalized on that. I'm gonna first go around and kind of add some more paint to these background flowers. So, well, first of all, I'm gonna just want to shape this one petal a little bit more. It's a little bit too small, I noticed. So I'm just gonna, before I get into the background, get that a little larger. Let me just get some more yellow. I ran out. I don't know why I put such a little amount of yellow. I guess I thought I was going to be using orange and yellow ochre more. So you could use yellow ochre. Let's see. It just kind of looks too dark. So I'll get some of this yellow light. And I mixed a little bit of white in there just to get that edge brighter again. Alright, so that's kind of more the way it looks in my reference photo. And plus I'm starting to wake up a little to my artistic brain here, starting to wake up a little. Get a little more. This too is a little bit kind of bigger. So you kind of wake up a little to your painting as you go. But as long as I like the looseness of it, I'm not too worried about getting like everything perfect. I like that there's really kind of loose marks everywhere. Alright, so I'm going to keep moving, and I want to now add more paint to these more abstract shapes and add a few of the different sort of pansy marks that, you know, the little petals and leaves and stuff that are kind of floating around there. So I'll get some of this yellow and just sort of make a light kind of limey color here. And there's some pansy shapes. I'm just kind of, you can see my brush is going down, and I'm just gonna make marks that are, they have these kind of fine narrow leaves, so I'll just put a few kind of random marks with that pretty color. So I'm going to get that viridian and that cad yellow light. You can use a little yellow ochre in there, tiny dab of white to make it stand out a bit more, and just kind of same thing. I'm not really, you know, following any exact thing. I just like the color. It also is, when I saw this picture, I thought all these pretty complementary type colors are going in it. So I'll get a little bit of that purple, thicker paint, some of that, the pinks. And you notice I'm not making anything too exact. I'm just putting in kind of the brush strokes, kind of block it in. just some shapes and designs to kind of fill the background. Around the flower, I might want to kind of make that pattern a little darker. Make some interesting edge marks here and there just to loosen it up some more. So as you can see, it's just very loose, looking generally very, all the brush strokes look really good. And can I get some thicker paint on there? I might go, I think even though the photo is lighter under the flower, I'm going to go darker just because I want that to really pop out. So you have the last say, you have your reference photo, but you're the one who decides, okay, I want this flower to really show. So you can change it up a little. Put in kind of like an idea of a little stem going in. Alright, so now we're kind of getting a lot of nice textures and colors here, patterns, and the more you paint, you'll start to see what's your own pattern that's going on here. So I like to carry it through, like if it kind of stops and doesn't feel right, I'll sort of add a little blob of purple or pink. So now I feel like there's a nice formation going through the whole thing. Put in some dark green pansy-ish petals in there, and some darker greens just randomly in there to add a whole nother dimension to the painting. And then if you think, oh, that tightened it up, just kind of, you can take your brush or paper towel and just sort of, lighten it up a little. Like that. And now, for the background, I think I might go and just mix up. I'm going to use a clean brush and just get some cobalt blue and a little bit of white, and try not to mix too much. But just, I'll put in a bit of that blue for the background. It's a real summer spring painting. Looks really happy with that blue. You could also use a lighter blue, so I could add a little bit of more white to it. And I kind of like different layers in my background like that, so there's light blue, dark blue, you know what I mean? So it's not just one color. And then if you want to put some blue in your mix, now's the time, because you're kind of in the groove with blue. Just get a little bit darker though, and maybe add a little green to it. So I'm just going to use a bit of that green, and I'll put, a bit of just a bit of blue in the rest of the composition so it really pops. Okay, now for the tricky part. I gotta go and want to add some of those little lines to my painting. So you can get a brush that's smaller, like a little, let's see, what is this? A 1. This is a 1 round. And get some of that dioxazine violet and kind of twirl your brush so that it forms more of a thinner point. You don't want to just go at it with a big bushy, so I'm kind of twirling it a bit. And then I'm just going to do a few little quick marks to add those pansy. And each time I'm going back and loading my tiny little brush. And just going to put it one or two more in there. And there's kind of one down there. And remember, you can always go back and, take one of them out. But you'll notice I'm loading my brush each time so that I don't have to kind of go back and redo it. And I'm really looking at my reference photo to make sure I've got it the right direction. So these ones kind of curve this way here. But again, they don't have to be perfect because it is a painting, so don't worry if you don't get it just right. And I'm not going for, exact, because otherwise it just would be so hard to follow and hard for everyone to learn. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can. I'm just kind of blending the shadow there a little. And now I want to go back and really add a bit of, just a little more of a highlight to that yellow, because it just I didn't want to mess with it while I was still painting everything else, but I could get a little brighter highlight on the side of that flower and on the top. So I'm just I mixed some white and cad yellow light, and I had some yellow ochre in it, but don't just add the cad yellow light and some white and this Indian yellow to warm it up a bit so it's not too bright. And I'm just pulling it to the edge and getting some of that real bright back on there. You could also use, if you're good at it, I'm pretty hit and miss, but sometimes you can just get a palette knife and get some of that yellow, same thing, grab some white, yellow, and just sort of get it on the edge there like that, and kind of be a daredevil with your palette knife and kind of smudging it together there. You can go back and get your brush to kind of get your brush and a little bit of that darker mix again, the Indian yellow, and kind of blend it a bit. But now you see I've got sort of a loose kind of edge to it, and it's a highlight. In this area here I could add a bit more paint. And also, same with the bright highlight on there, you could get a little white and some of that permanent rose. Tiny bit of cobalt blue, because permanent rose and cobalt blue make a really pretty violet. One of my top color mixes and just add a little highlight to the top of the flower as well. And you could add a few kind of palette knifey marks around. Just mix a bit of cobalt blue into that permanent rose and white mixture so you're not using as bright a color as your main flower. Kind of takes away from it a bit. And you could get a little bit of that white mixture and just sort of give it a little highlight there too. So, and another thing palette knives are good for is making these really cool kind of scratchy marks and then you can even put a little bit of the background with it so that you get kind of some of that I have so much paint on there I can kind of get rid of that mark a bit. There. And that's also kind of a fun thing to do. So get some of the green and you can add a little bit of that palette knife effect everywhere. Palette knife. So yeah, as you can see, it adds a lot of life to the painting and it just really makes the texture pop. But you can also do that with your brush, so don't feel like you have to try it. It's just sort of another thing I like to throw in there so that you guys can, you know, the whole point is to really just practice little things, and one or two of them will really be something that you like to do in your paintings, and that's what kind of helps you build your own style. You'll start to do something that you enjoy with your paint and that other people wouldn't necessarily do. And sometimes I'll take a bit of the pink and just have fun, put a little bit of it, a line here and there of it. Soften that one off a little. Don't want those edges up there to be too tight, so I'm just kind of softening some of those away. Added a little cobalt to that. Just softening some of those edges. All right, well, I think before I overdo it, I'm going to call it a painting, and hopefully this painting is fun for you to try, and I look forward to seeing you in other lessons, and make sure to share this with a friend if you're watching, and it'll be on my Patreon with the reference photo for everyone who is a member and supports my channel. And I really appreciate you, and any comments you have, just leave it in the comments below. Thank you. Bye-bye.